for It TV. The world is thinking.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you could understand. Wow, look at this. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you very much. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Wow. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's it. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. This is very amazing. Amazing. It's amazing because, believe it or not, I still think of myself as a country doctor that has gone to Congress, and I'm a quiet little congressman from Texas. And of course, for 30 years, I was rather quiet, but for some reason, in the past 18 months, it was discovered that the ideas of liberty and the revolution was alive and well, and we're celebrating it here tonight. But I truly do want to thank you. The support that you have given to me personally, to my family, and to the campaign has been really, really helpful to all that I've done. But you know, Barry Goldwater gave me a wonderful introduction, and he talked about my family. But you know, and he mentioned my wife Carol's been sick, and she's home and doing much better. But you know, I know she's doing a lot better because before I left home, she gave me a lot of instructions. And she told me what I was supposed to say here tonight. And one thing that she wanted me to say was a thank you, is personally from her, for the support, the prayers, and the letters and comments that you have made. We have really been blessed by all your friendship. You know, and even in that event, I saw something very wonderful about it, because our Christian friends sent us good wishes and prayers, and our Jewish friends sent good wishes and prayers, and our Muslim friends sent us good wishes and prayers. And lo and behold, we received a lot of good wishes from some agnostics, some atheists, and we were delighted to get those as well. It confirms my conviction that freedom brings people together. You know, early on in the campaign, I thought I might have really messed up because, you know, I answered a question rather truthfully about me becoming president. And I have truly been a reluctant candidate. and was not all that anxious to do it, not thinking that there would be a large number of people who cared. I was skeptical. Some said that you were apathetic and we helped remove that, but I lost my skepticism. I hope you lost your apathy. But when they asked me about what I wanted to do as president, I said, you know, I really look at it differently. I want to be president because of the things I don't want to do. I explained that I did not want to run people's lives, I did not want to run the economy, and I did not want to run the world. I didn't have the authority to do it, and I didn't have the Constitution behind me to do it. But they said that sounds like a weak president. I said, well, I don't think so. I think resisting the temptation of power requires some strength, and we don't need more government power. You know, I hope you agree that this has been a fantastic rally today. What do you think? Hey. And guess what? Guess what? Not one single taxpayer cent was spent on this rally. Now, I understand there's another meeting in a nearby town going on. Let us be respectful. But I also understand that we do not have to respect the conditions that allowed both other conventions to get $16.8 million apiece to run their party. And here we are. This was not inexpensive, and all of you contributed to it, and some a lot more than others, a lot of volunteers and a lot of money, and we paid every cent, and there is going to be no debt. You know, there should be an urgency about what we do. It would be nice to be relaxed and think that we're back in the 1950s when I first barely started thinking about politics, but it's not the 1950s anymore. It's a new century, and there's a lot more problems. And we have terrible threats around the world. We have a foreign policy that's gone amok. We have a monetary system that's in a mess, and we know all our problems. But there's an urgency in what we do because we are carrying the banner, and we must act because we as a group now have a greater moral responsibility to act than those who live in ignorance. Once you become knowledgeable, you have an obligation to do something about it. You know, it's almost been 2 years since the exploratory committee was announced, but a lot has happened, and so much of it has been so wonderful. And I have been so much encouraged by so many of you joining us. But there have been some things that, although I suspected were true, really came to light during this campaign. The one thing has been the response that has delighted me to no end, the response from the young people. Many times, the teenagers, less than voting age will bring their parents to my office in Washington, bring their parents in. And I said, who got most excited? Who got excited earliest? And many times it's the 14 and the 15-year-old that brings their parents in and introduces them to our ideas. And I said, well, how did you hear about it? I didn't know that you were reading the New York Times and watching the news. Oh, there's something called YouTube out there. That helped us tell us what's going on. But the young people responded well, but also those who were sitting and waiting and thinking about it, maybe young in spirit, but older in age, those individuals I consider in the remnant, the true believers that have been around and trying to bring us back around, they were there, the numbers were larger. It is said that we don't know the number of the remnant. We don't know where the remnant is. But if a time comes, you will be surprised how big it is. And I have been surprised, and I have been very pleased. Probably one of the most exciting things that happened during the campaign was the response that we got from a certain segment of society. In Washington, D.C., we frequently have resolutions being passed that rubber stamp the foreign policy of intervention. But they always get passed, usually nearly unanimously. Maybe there's a few, and sometimes there's only one opposing the resolution. But these resolutions will be designed to support the policies in Iraq and our so-called threat against Iran. And it is said that if you don't support it, you don't support the troops. Well, you know, the most exciting thing was, I think it was in our first quarter this year, when they added up the number of dollars that came from the troops. Our campaign got more money from the troops than all the other candidates put together. You know, it was interesting to see how the establishment responded. You saw it on TV, you saw it in the debates, and so often it was a treatment of exclusion or marginalization or just making fun of what we're doing. And I think that didn't surprise me one bit. But you know, one thing that when things like that happen, we need to turn them around, and there wasn't much effort needed to do that. Because the more they did that, it seemed the more it energized you in support for our cause. We have also noticed that those in the establishment aren't very anxious to welcome us in. Even though our numbers are growing, we respond and appeal to young people. You would think that they would welcome us. And yet, on occasion, a few of you may have been exposed that sometimes the rules get bent. Sometimes the rules are even ignored. But you know, in another sense, government power really wants to protect itself. So they will use power and force. Not only in politics will they bend the rules, but really in society as well. They will break the rules and break the laws, and they're even known to illegally invade premises to find out what people are talking about in case they're talking about politics. That is not very good. You know, the one thing that I have said is that the revolution is a lot more than about me. There is no doubt about it. This revolution will continue. But I would like to think that the campaign and our efforts together have done a whole lot to speed up the revolution that was destined to come anyway. So often people ask me, how did we lose the republic? Have we lost it? Essentially, we have. It may be hanging by a thread. That's why I claim that we have a sense of urgency here. We don't have decades and decades. We have to do something rather quickly. But today we have to move rather quickly. But how did we lose it? And I think of some of the things that happened in Washington to symbolize this loss of the republic. And one thing that I've made comments many years ago that I noticed on the House floor, and this has to change, that the two weakest arguments on the House floor would be a moral argument and a constitutional argument. That we need to change. Another attitude that we must change, and you've heard this said many times, that if the government gives us a tax cut, they have to be cautious because that is written off as a cost to government. How could that be? That is the assumption that the government owns us and owns the fruits of our labor, and what we get to keep is done at the permission of the government, which proves the point that even a 1% income tax is morally wrong because it sows the seeds of destruction. You know, the survival of the republic was discussed at the time of the foundings, and the founding fathers came to the conclusion that we would and could have a republic, but the republic depended on a moral people. So we complain a lot about the government and all that is going on, and we blame this person or other person, but in a way, it is a reflection of the morality of the people. So in doing this, we have to understand the morality of the law and the morality of what we do. So if we are not a moral people, a perfect constitution cannot save us. We don't have a perfect constitution, but we have a real good one. But the fact that if we have people who ignore it, it won't serve our purpose. So you have to have a moral people and a system of government and moral politicians who represent us. Another thing that has happened is that we lost track of the fact that the Constitution was written to restrain the government. Now it's turned on its head. The Constitution or the government is there. They use it to restrain us. That is upside down. And over the years, the government gets more and more powerful. It's not only the executive branch, it's the judicial branch, it's the legislative branch, it's the bureaucratic branch of government. And more power gravitates away from the individual, away from the states, into the hands of the bureaucrats and the politicians in Washington. Not only that, do we have to worry about all this power gravitating to the power to be in Washington, it's even going further. We have to worry about powers gravitating to international governments, to the New World Order. That, of course, would have to be reversed as well. But another thing that happened over these many years that have allowed us to slip away from the Republic and the principles of liberty is we came as a nation to believe that a person's needs are essentially rights. If you need something or want something or demand something, that does not give you a right to it. Rights are something that are very precious. They don't come from the government. They come in a natural way or a God-given way. They come as a right to your life and a right to your liberty. I believe the trends in the school system over the last many decades has been detrimental. And it hasn't been one party. Even in the 50s, it started with the federal government getting involved. There is nothing in the Constitution that says the federal government should be involved in education at all. So we've had a system of government that has been encouraged by our school system. The economics taught in the school system is never free market, Austrian hard money economics. It's always Keynesian soft money economics that are wrong. And not only that, we get taught history in our public schools. And who are the great presidents? The great presidents are always said to be the ones who run a war. Why don't we have the peace candidates be the great presidents? Something else has happened over the many decades, and that is our confusion on what patriotism is all about. Guess who the true early American patriots supported? They didn't support the current government that they had, and yet today they want you to believe that patriotism means that you support everything the government wants. A true patriot defends liberty and the people. And just naming a bill the Patriot Act and voting for that doesn't make you a patriot. The true patriot will repeal the Patriot Act, is what they will do. Another thing the American people have been enticed into believing is that if you support the free market system and you don't support the welfare state, that you can't be a humanitarian. That's total nonsense. If you really care about your fellow man and you care about prosperity and you care about peace, you have to care about liberty, not socialism and welfarism and corporatism. We as a group are often challenged by saying, oh, you're the people that want to go back to the dark ages. You want to go back to the dark ages of sound money. You want to go to the dark ages of minding our own business in international affairs. But the real truth is that the old-fashioned ideas is tyranny, and we want to get away from those old-fashioned ideas. Freedom is a new idea, and it's only been tried in a short period of time, and that's when the world has become more productive and poverty has been wiped out. But what do we see now? We're drifting back in that direction, and people are moving into poverty, even in this country, because they do not understand and do not defend the principles of liberty. Approximately 100 years ago or so, philosophically, this country accepted the notion that freedom was made up of two parts. Two parts. One, where your personal liberties mean one thing, and on the other hand, your economic liberties are separate. That is complete nonsense. Liberty is one unit. You have a right to your life. You have a right to live your life the way you want. You have a right to work hard, and you ought to have a right to keep the fruits of your labor. In one of the debates, we were asked as a group, what do you think is the greatest moral crisis that we're facing today in this country? And the thought that crossed my mind during that debate, and I still believe it's one of the most serious moral crises we face, and that is we as a nation have come to accept, at least the policies go in that direction, that we as a nation now accept the principle of preventive war, actually starting war. There is no moral justification from that, and there certainly is no constitutional justification to fight these many wars that we have been fighting without a declaration of war. We take the oath of office to obey the Constitution when we're sworn into office, and we take that when we're sworn into the military. And we swear to uphold the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Guess what? We do a pretty good job defending against foreign threats. We overdo that because we have no foreign threats. We have no threat that somebody's going to invade this country. We have a threat of terrorism, but that is a consequence of a seriously flawed foreign policy. We overdo our concerns about our foreign threats, but we do forget about the threat from our domestic conditions that we have here. And since 9/11, our liberties have been threatened. They have been undermined. We are less free since 9/11. We're going in the wrong direction. Both parties in these last several decades, and especially in the last decade, has accepted the notion of the unitary president, which is essentially a dictatorship, allowing the president to make decisions on his own. And just think of the inconsistency of turning this power over to the executive branch and then allowing the president to make these decisions, writing executive orders. There should be essentially no executive orders or very, very few executive orders. And we can't have a president that goes and takes a bill and arbitrarily writes a signing statement and says, oh, I only like part of this bill, I'm going to ignore the other part. No presidential signing statements to have line item vetoes. So what about the bureaucrats in Washington? Do you think they should have the power to write law? Where did they get this power? Only the Congress is supposed to write the laws, and yet bureaucrats are writing the laws all the time. Just think of the Federal Register, volumes and volumes and volumes, and if you don't understand every single regulation, you can get into big trouble. And yet, isn't it wonderful? Isn't it wonderful that the Constitution is not complex? We can read it, and most school kids should be able to understand it. But that might be one of the reasons the Constitution is not taught in our public schools, because if we raised up a new generation of individuals, they might realize that this whole system of government that we're inheriting and that we're working with and trying to change is unconstitutional. We shouldn't have it. Another reason why we have lost the republic, it didn't come all of a sudden. It has come slowly and insidiously. The last 100 years has been tough on the republic. But it started immediately after the Constitution. I mean, the Jeffersonians argued with the Hamiltonians, and they talked about central banking and big government and sedition acts. And so the fights were going on very early to undermine these principles that the founders understood. But today, it's been more rapid, it's insidious and slowly. But I think what has lulled so many people to sleep has been that we have been pretty prosperous. We're still fairly prosperous. But there is a big difference today, and why the people are awakening is they know that it's an illusion. They know that the prosperity is actually going down, and they're starting to realize that this prosperity comes from too much borrowing and too much spending and too much inflation. I haven't even gotten to that part yet. Will you do it again when I get to that part? You know, it is said that we are having this threat of terrorism because it's a clash of civilization. Another civilization wants to attack us because we are a certain civilization. I haven't bought into that. But there is some religious problems in the world that helps contribute to this, and there's a foreign policy problem that contributes to it. But I do believe that there is a real clash and an argument between radical Muslim fundamentalists in contrast to secular Muslims. It just happens that we as a nation have allied ourselves with secular Muslims, imposed our will by propping up these puppet governments in the Middle East, antagonizing and actually giving motivation to the radicalism that wants to come here to kill us. But why should that be so strange? What if somebody came over here that looked differently than us, had different religious and different values, and put an air base on our land and imposed their will? The one good thing that would come of that is this whole country would be totally unified, because we would resent the enforcement, the occupation of any foreign power on our land. Civilization advances when you have less power in government. The more power you have in government, the more they resort to the ancient tradition of the warrior spirit. The warrior spirit where everything is gained by going out and robbing and killing and plundering. And today it's a little bit different. They plunder through inflating the currency and taxation, but it's still plundering, but it's power in the hands of government. We had an example, a beautiful example of minimal power in our government, and then we had maximum productivity and maximum wealth. But today we think too much of the wealth and believe that government provides this, rather than understanding that wealth and prosperity comes from freedom and productivity and not from the government. One other thing that we have done to help contribute to the loss of our republic has been this notion that we should give up some of our liberties to be safe and secure. There is absolutely never a reason to give up 1 ounce of freedom for the sake of security. It won't work. Besides our flawed foreign policy, there were a few other problems that contributed to 9/11. One was our lack of clear understanding of how the Second Amendment is supposed to work. And once again, even before 9/11, it was assumed the government would take care of us and be safe. They were in charge of airport security, and they after some hijacking in the 70s, we were all taught one thing you never do is resist anybody that wants to take over an airplane, and certainly the airlines wouldn't be allowed to have guns on the airplane. That would be terrible. But we have companies in this country still today. These companies are armored cars, and they carry money around, and they have guns, and they do a pretty good job protecting their cargo. But we were handicapped in this country because we were dependent on the government, and our cargo, our passengers, weren't protected as they should have been. They said that, no, they're too dangerous, but can you imagine what 4 airplanes involved? Maybe 4 guns, or just the knowledge that the guns were there might have prevented the whole thing. There have been some serious consequences of our lack of respect and our loss of liberty and lack of concern and defense of our republic. And we're suffering the consequences. This is what we're talking about. How can we reverse this trend? I think we have to understand how it happened, what the problems were, and what we have to aim for. But we've had a lot of problems because of this. Number one, economic problems, because they do not understand the Constitution and economics on monetaries. I mean, it is very clear what we should be doing. The founders knew and understood something about inflation. The runaway inflation of the continental dollar was devastating to the economy, so they were explicit. They said no emitting of bills of credit, no printing money, no paper money, and that only gold and silver should be legal tender. Not yet. Didn't give you the signal yet. Now it comes. There is no authority in the Constitution authorizing a central bank, which means there should be no Federal Reserve System. No! Now, can you believe that 18 months ago, at the beginning of this campaign, that I didn't believe any of you existed and cared about or understood anything about the Federal Reserve? It's great. As a consequence of our lack of concern for the protection of liberties, we have suffered tremendously from this. We don't have privacy anymore. We pass bills like the Patriot Act and the FISA legislation, and the Military Commissions Act. No Military Commissions Act. We need to defend habeas corpus. And the one thing that we don't need, that they're doing in the name of catching all those potential terrorists, is we do not need and should not accept a national ID card. There's another war that's been going on for a good many years, but especially since the early 70s, we have spent hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars on this particular war, but it's been war on American citizens more than it's been a war to change these conditions. And that is the war on drugs, which has been a complete, total failure. The war on drugs has led us to a condition where the states pass laws that say that if you happen to be ill, you are sick, you're getting chemotherapy, you have AIDS, and you get benefit by smoking marijuana, and the law permits you to do it, which should be permissible in a republic. No, the federal government actually arrests sick people in the name of compassionate conservatism and putting people in prison. But some say, well, it's dangerous. You might do other things, and there's a danger to you on what you do with your own body. Yeah, you know, I made a comment once in a speech on the House floor. I said, yes, some of the strongest drug warriors in Washington, D.C. rant and rave about the possibility of a sick person using marijuana for their illness at the same time. But guess what? They have no hesitation to imbibe in that drug called alcohol, a more dangerous drug. But the drug war has caused us to do so many foolish things. Not only it's a violation of freedom of choice and taking your own risks, it violates the concept of states' rights and state legislation, but it also has done something rather weird in many ways. This whole idea, and it's only recent, it's in the lifetime of many of us here. It was the first federal law against the use of marijuana occurred in 1937, I believe. 1937. Before that, people did use that. States had right to regulate, but it's a recent onset. But during the war, it was important that a related plant to marijuana called hemp was used. They were encouraged to grow it. It was useful in the war effort. You can make clothes and medical problems and food products out of hemp. But we are obsessed and confused. And what does the federal government do? If you go out and plant hemp plants, you're going to go to jail. What's going on? And they'll tell you, oh no, it's a drug. Somebody might smoke it. But you know what? To get high on a hemp cigarette, the cigarette has to be big as a telephone pole. This is a very, very serious issue. And the last thing I ever want to leave anybody with is that I think drugs are safe. I think drugs are very dangerous. I think illegal drugs, the ones that are currently illegal, are very, very dangerous, and we should be very cautious about it. But I also, as a physician, recognize of the great danger of prescription drugs. What about the government mandating mental health testing for all our school kids? And when they run these pilot programs, they find that 10% of our students really need help with these psychotropic drugs. That's the kind of drug regulation that we need. We need to stop that. But this whole issue of hemp is rather fascinating, not only in the idea of personal choices and states' rights, but also the stupid complications that come from it. So what do? We talk about our energy problems, and we do because the government's too much involved. They subsidize one form of energy and they prohibit the other form of energy. They put roadblocks in front of nuclear energy, and then they go and subsidize raising corn to make ethanol, which doesn't make any economic sense. Now, the Brazilians know how to make ethanol from sugarcane, and they can actually sell us ethanol made in Brazil cheaper than we can make it from corn in this country. But what happens? We put a tariff on it to punish you, so you have to pay more for it. But there is a better source of ethanol, and it happens to be hemp. The founders were great. They knew how important freedom of choice is and how valuable the marketplace is. Government bureaucrats and politicians are incapable of making correct economic decisions. They're capable of only making mistakes. This whole notion that the federal government has to tell us, what we can eat and drink and smoke leads to some other silly things. Because today, can you believe this? Can you believe that the federal government has regulations on the delivery of raw milk? Now that is real dangerous, giving you that much freedom that you can make up your own mind about whether or not you can drink whole milk. But there are restrictions and restraints, and it just goes on and on. And it comes from the concession that we need a little bit of government or a little bit of welfare. I've heard so many times over the years that, yes, I'm opposed to this welfare system, I'm opposed to this, unless you need it. But if you concede it and say, well, there's only a few people that need it, and there has to be a safety net. The problem with that argument is you assume it's going to be a small percentage of people that are going to get the help, but you've conceded 100% of the principle. And then what happens is if there's something that comes for free, you subsidize something, you get more of it, and it leads to the devastating complications of what a welfare society comes to. But not only that, is so often the good motivations, the moral high ground that the other side so often have is it doesn't work out. It doesn't really help those people, whether it's domestic welfare or national and foreign welfare. What it generally helps are the people who are in power and in control in the corporations. If you have a housing program, and we've just witnessed what happens when the government gets involved in directing housing money and the malinvestment through the Federal Reserve. So what they do is they end up doing the same thing over and over again. And what we need to do is break up this cycle and say that we have to stop this, because if not, it'll bankrupt and destroy our country and destroy our liberties. There's one issue that frequently I barely mention, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more tonight. And that is the bum rap we get who believe in freedom that we don't care about the environment. That is just not true. The environment, if you think about it, has been damaged very often by bad federal government regulations. The dependency on government to build our rivers and our dams and our levees and say that government will take care of us, and they build them in the wrong places, and we have these consequences. But the environment can be protected by the marketplace and strict adherence to property rights. People do not... None of us have a right to pollute our neighbor's property. We don't have a right to pollute their property, their air, or their water. A strict adherence to this would protect the environment. But just like in welfare, the corporations benefit in some of the rules and regulations in the environment. Certain corporations benefit by that as well. Somebody abuses the system. That's why government should be very minimal very minimal in protecting liberty. This does not give you license. Liberty is not license. It means that you have a right to your own life, but you don't have a right to do any harm to your neighbor's property or another person. That is the one limitation that we have. One thing that I believe is coming out as a consequence of the campaign in the primary has been transitioned to the Campaign for Liberty. And now we've had a grand 3 days, and we're climaxing that campaign right now. And there's every reason in the world for us to be energized. All I can say is a year and a half ago, I had no idea what it would lead to. And it's led to a lot more than I ever dreamed of. But I firmly believe now that our day is coming. The conditions are such that there is room now for the defense of liberty. And the people know that the system we have is not working. It's not working economically. It's not working monetarily. Our foreign policy is not working. And therefore, they're looking for answers. They will not welcome us with open arms. We've found that out. But there is a vacuum out there. And the vacuum is not in one political party. It is pervasive. It's throughout the country. It is throughout the political system. But our views are just as pervasive. Ideas spread. They can't stop them. An idea whose time has come cannot be stopped by any army or any government. You know, they like to describe us being on the fringe and a little bit kooky now and then. But isn't that rather strange? We talk about these strange things like balanced budgets, personal liberty, privacy, a sound national defense, defend this country. And we define, and they want to say that these are bizarre ideas. But it's time now for some just very good common sense. You know, they harp about the need to be around the world. And right now, the candidates out there in the major parties don't have a really difference in their foreign policy. They both want more troops in Afghanistan. They really want to maintain bases in the Middle East for a long time. They want to threaten Iran. And lo and behold, both candidates now think we should send more of your money to Georgia to protect that oil line. And that's not the state of Georgia either. You know, I told somebody once, I said, here we are messing around with Georgia. Well, before we know it, we'll be sending troops over there and our kids will be dying over there. And since they got out of public school, they probably don't even know where the country of Georgia is. And somebody said, they probably don't even know where the state of Georgia is. But it is positively amazing how the war drums can beat and how the propaganda machine can work and how this country is, you know, can be built up to practically want to go to war against Iran. You know, Iran spends 1% as much money on their national defense as we spend. They have no missiles, no airplane, no tanks, and no nuclear weapons. The UN inspectors say they don't have it, and we're supposed to be intimidated and scared, and we put anti-ballistic missiles on the border of Russia because the Iranians might shoot missiles at us that they don't even have. The Iranians, if you want to put it in perspective, they don't even refine their own gasoline, and we're supposed to be frightened and intimidated by them. We got to get the truth out. That is what we need. The wonderful thing about restoring the Republic and restoring our interest in liberty is that is the key to releasing creative energy. Creative energy only comes from individuals. It is not collective. You can't have collective farms. It doesn't work. But energy and creativity comes from the individual. And we saw that today by the creative artists. They're individuals that can be artists because they're creative. But we all are individuals. We have to be creative. We have to have the motivation. And the strongest motivation in the world is to take care of ourselves. We shouldn't be embarrassed by that. We're allowed to. We're responsible to take care of ourselves. We should be embarrassed by asking somebody else to take care of us. The wonderful part about a free society, you eliminate entirely victims. There are no victims. You may be a victim of bad judgment, but you're not a victim of the government taking money from you and giving it to somebody else and wasting it. You know, I have a bumper sticker in my office on my desk there that is rather popular. It says, "Don't steal. The government hates the competition." Some people worry that our numbers aren't great enough, that we don't have 51% of the population behind us. But ideas only need to be led by 5 to 10% of the people. They can bring about a revolution. And today, I heard a statistic that shows that our numbers are much greater than that, even in the base of the Republican Party. Just think how strong they are throughout the whole country. But the one thing that I would wish those individuals who are not here tonight, because I know you understand it, and that is the counterfeit offers from others who say that we will take care of you, we will bring about change, and we are the peace candidate, and we will rally the young people. Those are counterfeit, because when you look at the description of what they're talking about, it's just more of the same. And I think you can sense that. You know the difference. What we have when we have a free society, we reject the idea of people being leeches and looters and plunderers. We don't need them. We need self-reliance, self-respect, and taking care of ourselves. That is what makes the nation move. I have been asked these last several days quite frequently, what am I doing this for? What's the purpose of all this? And in many ways, it is to send a message. There is no doubt about it. And I have advocated that the message is very, very important. And I've also encouraged it to be non-confrontational and to think that we'll be disruptive and doing things that doesn't really achieve anything and they paint us in a bad light. But there is no doubt philosophically that the message has to be sent. Now, yes, many of us are working in the Republican Party. I've worked in the Republican Party. But this is much bigger than the Republican Party. Yes. So I encourage people, if they want to work in the Republican Party, and the Campaign for Liberty certainly will be, to have an influence. But we need to send the message. It's the philosophic message. But in a true revolution, believe me, the revolution doesn't occur with a single political party. A true revolution, then those views will be reflected in the Republican Party, in the Democrat Party, in the Independent Party, and everybody in the country will be affected. One subject that comes up not too infrequently, more these days than ever before, and that is, and it was hinted at today with some of the speakers, you know, when do we get so dissatisfied with our current operation of trying to bring about change? And some are already very dissatisfied. Some even that believe the way we do are frustrated with the slowness of what we do, and they want to do things in a much more aggressive manner. But I think there is a time and place for that. But there is a time and place, I think, for peaceful civil disobedience. The changes brought about by Gandhi and Martin Luther King were peaceful, and they knew and understood the consequences. And we do know that people in our movement have already suffered the consequences, because they may be 100% correct on the tax code and the monetary issue, and they end up behind bars. So that is the consequence. And there may be a time coming that, say, this foreign policy gets out of hand, which I worry about all the time, because both parties endorse more militarism. And if you know, one thing that we have found out about the incident in Georgia, even if we wanted to or had needed to, we didn't have the troops to do anything about it. We have weakened our national defense. You know what that means? Those who want to pursue the empire will reinstitute the draft. We should not ever have a draft. But there would be some tough decisions. There would be a lot of tough decisions to make about when to practice this. And if there is a draft, those will be very, very hard decisions, but they have had to be made before, and they could again. I have always resorted to saying, I don't like it, and I want to resist it, but I want to change, and as long as the system is available to me to run for office and to rally the troops, this is the way I will be working. How did you like Amy Allen today? They were all good, but she sang a song, and she probably told you the Universal Soldier. She sang that for me because I asked her to do that. And that sends such an important message to me personally, because it talks about really the essence of decision making. And it talks about when you really resist and should you strike and not participate any longer. And that song makes the point that it's the universal soldier that allows the bureaucrats and the big government power mongers in Washington and around the world to exist. And it's always done. They entice you, they get young people, and they make you feel like if you don't go along, you're unpatriotic. And like the song says, for 1,000 years, there's been the universal soldier. And where would the dictators be if we didn't have the universal soldier willing to go? There would be no wars. I think of the story of the early days of World War I on Christmas Eve. When they took a pause, and the Germans and the British started singing Christmas carols. And they finally got together and exchanged gifts and had a Christmas tree. And then in a day or two later, the armed might of the government comes in and said, you will not have peace. You must go back to shooting and killing each other again. Two Christian nations killing each other for senseless reasons. No sense whatsoever. And it was the control of the universal soldier. And I have to confess, I have been the universal soldier too. You know, as a young man, as a doctor, I was drafted during the Cuban crisis. Ended up serving, not in Vietnam, but during that era. But there were times that people were starting to resist, but I marched off and I was the universal soldier. And there's a tough decision. What we need today to replace the universal soldier is the universal champion of liberty. Just as we need a president who offers to do less and not to run your life and run the economy and police the world, we once again have to have individuals who will stand up and defend our liberties. That is what we need. Freedom really is the answer, and fortunately for us, freedom is still very popular. Traditionally, over the history of mankind, governments have always appealed to idealism, whether it's to draft us and call us up and do duty, and if you don't do it, you're unpatriotic. And this is the problem that we have, that they're always appealing to the idealism. And the idealist, goes along with it. But they do evil things. They get people to get pulled in because they're idealists and they want to do it. Why can't we do the same thing to appeal to the idealism of the young people, the people of the country, to do the right thing? Let me close by just giving you a strong word of encouragement, mainly because I've been very encouraged by you. And you have given me a whole lot. And I sincerely believe our day is coming. It's only beginning. What has happened in these last 18 months has been phenomenal. And can you imagine going from those 12 spammers we had at the beginning to what we have here tonight? Wow. So, in 18 months, let's say that we had 1,000% increase in our numbers of energetic freedom fighters. What if we have 1,000% increase with those who are with us today? We have a large crowd here tonight. But what about the country? We're not talking about 10,000. We're not talking about 100,000. We're not even talking about the 1.2 million that voted in the campaign for our election. We're talking about many millions of people in this country and around the world who have heard this message, and it's growing, and it seems like even if they try, they can't stop us. So once again, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the trust that you have placed in me, but more so the trust that you have placed in the concept of our God-given rights to our life and our liberty. Thank you very much.